If you've listened to the Hope Strategy podcast for a while, or if you're new around here, there's a good chance you've heard us mention MWI, which is Josh and I's digital marketing agency that we own and operate. None of the Hope Strategy podcast and the time and energy and effort that we've put into this would be possible without MWI and the amazing team that we have there and the work that we do, which allows us to do something like this that we love. We are a marketing agency that focuses on building and maintaining win-win partnerships with amazing brands. We've worked with small brands and helped them get off the ground, whether it's through social media marketing or building their websites. But we've also done consulting and large digital marketing projects for companies that you would have heard of, like Tempur-Pedic or Marriott or Hotels.com or Virgin Atlantic or a lot of other companies. Through listening to the podcast, we hope that you're enjoying it. And I would like to offer a free 20-minute consultation to anybody that listens to the podcast that's looking for some digital marketing help. Just go to mwi.com/hope strategy and sign up, and we'll reach out to you, and you will get a free 20-minute consultation with yours truly to talk about your digital marketing needs, to talk about your website, whatever questions you have. I'm happy to answer them. Really all with the intent to find ways to help your business thrive and grow online. Thank you so much for listening to the Hope Strategy podcast. Please reach out. I'd love to help you with your marketing.
I think this is another answer that's almost a little cliche, but it's just start. Like, go for it. Make a list of what you want to do and then break that down into every tiny detail and take that first step of, even if it's Googling how to sell something online, like, just start and go, because you'll run into dead ends and you'll go back and you'll figure it out. But if you don't start that momentum, you won't get there. I think people need to get more comfortable with the idea of failure than the idea of regret.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hope Strategy podcast. I am here today solo, no Josh with me. If you heard the Jason Bagley interview, these interviews were done the same day as the episode we did with Jason, and Josh was unavailable. So it's just me, co-host of the Hope Strategy podcast, Corey Blake, who had the opportunity today to talk with Tristen Ikaika. I would try to pronounce his full name. I guess his name is Tristen Ikaika Persons, but his website's Tristen Ikaika. His brand is Tristen Ikaika. If you want to learn more about him, see more about him, just search Tristen Ikaika and you'll find him. Tristen is a young entrepreneur. He's 20 years old, but he's already done so much with that 20 years, so much more than a lot of people do in their entire lifetimes. He's traveled the entire world and found inspiration and creativity in his travels that led him to starting an online company, TristenIkaika.com, where he creates customized spoon rings. I had never heard of a spoon ring before, but I learned all about them, and you will too. It basically started as a small business, a passion project to say, you go out and you find these kind of vintage, cool spoons, and then you can cut them down and bend them and turn them into rings. And so he started doing that just for himself, and people said, those are really cool. And then on his Instagram, people started saying, hey, how do I get one of those? And so he said, maybe I could turn this into a business. And so he went out and started collecting those and putting them up on his website, and people would say, I want to buy that. And so he'd sell it and make them a ring. It's now grown a lot. We were joking throughout the conversation that I went to his website to look at his product and everything was sold out, which is a very good sign for an e-commerce business. With the website that is sold out around Christmas time. We did this interview just after Christmas. So really was honestly taken aback a little bit with the conversation I had with Tristen. I didn't anticipate the amount of understanding and self-awareness and wisdom that he brought to the table. I didn't expect that. He really, really understands a lot about entrepreneurship, about hustle and grind, about building a brand, about being creative, about taking leaps of faith and putting in the work to see the results. If you've listened to the podcast a lot, you've heard me talk about getting in over your head and loving it, learning to love it, how that's such a key to success, a key to entrepreneurial success, specifically, as we've talked about a lot on the podcast. And Tristen had some stories that he told us on the podcast that just completely are that, right? He got in over his head. He loved it, and he made things happen when others maybe wouldn't have. So really inspiring. We also talked about, the world of influencer marketing and what it's like to have a brand that is your name, that is your Instagram handle, that is your, company. It's really interesting. And it was cool to get his perspective and hear how he goes into thinking about that through the lens of mental health and, what it means for him and how he ties his successes and his failures to his name and all of that. So really cool, really great insight. I was pleasantly surprised with the conversation we had and really enjoyed Tristen Ikaika. He was the man. So please enjoy this episode with Tristen Ikaika.
Something is happening in our world.
Time is very precious.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.
Hope in the face of difficulty.
More than machinery, we need humanity.
Hope in the face of uncertainty.
I'm better now than I was. I'm experienced now.
Changing the world can happen anywhere, and anyone can do it.
The audacity of hope.
This is the Hope Strategy Podcast with Corey Blake and Josh Steinley. I really am excited to talk to you, though. I've worked with a lot of, it's weird for me to say this because I feel like I'm not like an old entrepreneur in any way or anything, but I've worked with a lot of young entrepreneurs. I taught entrepreneurship at BYU Hawaii. I've worked with a lot of really cool brands. Dude, your stuff, from like your Instagram to the videos I've seen to the influencer stuff that you've done to your product itself, is so money. And it's a good sign when I go to tristenikaika.com and I start flipping through and every single thing is sold out. I think every product but one is sold out right now.
Yeah, that's right.
So how do I get my Tristen Ikaika stuff if I can't get anything on the website?
Yeah, it's all sold out. Just the one drop is the only way.
Yeah. So that's a good sign, obviously, that you're doing something right. And I'm excited to kind of hear the whole journey and stuff.
For sure.
So first off, tell me a little bit about your upbringing, kind of where you're coming from. You're obviously super creative, ambitious, audacious. You've done a lot of cool stuff, but tell me more about kind of the upbringing and maybe where some of that comes from.
Yeah. So born and raised in Orem, Utah, pretty normal childhood, I would say. We would go to Hawaii in the summers because my sister moved there for BYU Hawaii. And like my dad's from Hawaii, so we just loved it there. And I feel like that kind of influenced my love for like almost like adventure, like just like going to the beach or going on a hike, like seeing the world in Hawaii. I just wanted to keep seeing it other places.
Yeah.
And then I was always just like, I would say creative, and definitely went all in on things like school projects. I would kill myself, like staying up all night, going above and beyond stuff that I was like completely unnecessary to do, but it was just like, I couldn't not do it for the project.
Yeah.
So it's definitely always been like creative, and I don't know if you want to say over the top, but just like, I guess high goals, and then I like go after them.
The work ethic side of that, where does that come from? I mean, is that something you just grew up with? Like, cause most teenagers are like, what's the minimum I need to do to get this project in and get a decent grade? If you're like killing yourself to stay up to really tackle it and overachieve, where does that come from?
I definitely think part of it was just in me. Like, it's kind of all I've ever known, but also my dad and mom are both sort of that way. Like, if we're going to have people over, my dad's going to make all these things and all these drinks and do this and like stuff that most people wouldn't do, but it's kind of just something that we do, I guess, in my family.
Yeah.
My oldest sister is also the same way, like has to do everything all out. Sometimes you want to kill her because it's like, no, we don't need to do everything. Like just the minimum's enough. But then I'm like, oh, I'm the same way. And so, yeah, just kind of our way of life.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, exactly.
So what other impact did the Hawaii stuff have on you? Because I feel like when I look at the brand kind of an overview and like scroll through the Instagram and look at the product and so you kind of see, and you mentioned it right off the top, like that had a pretty significant influence on you going back. What about those summers in Hawaii had an impact on the work that you're doing and kind of the overall brand and stuff?
I would say a big one is it kind of sparked my love for like pictures and like photo and video, because it's so pretty in Hawaii. It's like natural to want to make cool pictures and cool videos and all that. And so that was something that definitely started like as soon as I got to Hawaii. I had all these ideas for like pictures and videos and like creating. And then now I can like look back in hindsight and see how that's translated into me making photo and video for my business. I would definitely say that all sparked kind of in Hawaii.
So what came first? Did the brand come first, like the rings and the jewelry? Did that come first, or did you start building a following on social media and doing stuff for other brands first, or kind of what was the chicken and the egg thing there?
Yeah, so I was filming weddings my like senior year of high school. It was just like a good way to make some money, and I was also taking photos for people, like family photos, senior portraits, all that, the whole 9 yards. And I remember thinking like, okay, this wedding gig, like you can make decent money. Like you say you charge like $1,200 a wedding, like film 2 or 3 a month. Like that's a pretty decent income, especially for like someone who's in high school. Yeah. So I was kind of doing that. And then I had gone on a trip out of the country with my best friend, and it was my first time out of the country. We went to Europe and just went to like a couple places in Italy and then also to Paris. And I just like fell in love with that feeling of not knowing where you are and like the unknown and just like the magic of travel that you almost can't explain.
Yeah.
So then when I got back from that trip, I was just like, that was all I wanted to do. My senior year, I kind of had no more motivation to put any effort into school, because I had this mental shift of like, instead of putting all this effort into these projects for a teacher, if I took that energy and put it into something I was passionate about, I could do something with that. And so that was kind of the mental shift that took place. And then we kept traveling. Like I went to Bali that summer, and then we went to Dubai, and my travel content on Instagram and like hanging out with all my friends, it kind of just like built up a following. Nothing significant. Maybe like, I forget how many I had when I started selling rings, maybe like 16 or in the 20s, thousand, which is good, but nothing like insane. And then it was that December after I graduated, like about 6 months, that I decided to start selling the rings. And then I kind of just never looked back after that.
How long ago was that?
Just over 3 years. Just hit 3 years last month.
It's crazy, man. I was a student at BYU Hawaii in 2012. And I remember, I assume you know who Amber Mozo is. So Amber came to our class. So this was in 2012. Instagram came out in 2012. So she came to one of my digital marketing classes and spoke. And the reason that the teacher had her come in is because she had 5,000 followers on Instagram. And it was like,
that's crazy.
Mind-blowing. It was like, what? She's got 5,000. You know what I mean? Like it was a game changer. And so the whole, and I know Amber as well. And it's not like she doesn't love going up and speaking in front of like an entire class of people, but I remember her just being kind of like, I don't know. I just post good pictures and like, I use some hashtags and people seem to follow it. But yeah, crazy to think that just in 2012, which wasn't that long ago, she was teaching us things to do in order to hit this amazing goal of hitting 5,000 followers. And now you're like, I mean, you're a few years behind that. You're like, it wasn't like nothing. There's like 16,000, maybe 20,000. You know what I mean? But that's
for sure.
It's crazy. It's like just a few years and the game has changed completely.
Yeah, no, I feel like social media every year is completely different. It just changes so fast.
So you started posting travel content and saying, oh, people are interested in this. I love this. I'm filling my cup, so to speak. I'm out there doing all this cool stuff and feeling really fulfilled. And then how did you come up with the idea to do rings? I know a lot of people, right? A lot of people will build up some level of influence, as we'll call it, and have people following them and interested in their life. And a lot of times they're like, well, what do I do with this? How, if they are, some people are like, I don't want to do anything with it. But if they're entrepreneurial in any way, like it sounds like you are, and were growing up and stuff, it's like, well, how can I leverage this in order to build a business maybe? So what was that thought process like, and how did you go about it?
So I had started making rings when I was probably 12 years old. We had a family friend who had a spoon ring, and I thought it was so cool. And I told my dad, and he's like, oh, we could make that, right? So like we went into the garage, got some random tools, and just like it was super janky, but like we made one and it was just like, it was my staple. Like I love that I made it, and rings, I just think like elevate a person's style. For someone who doesn't wear rings, you just can tell like they care about the little details. So I'd be making them and people would always be like, oh, you should sell them. You should sell them. And I was just like, I don't like, no, I kind of like that I only make them for me. And I don't know how to launch a big business. Like that's big and scary. So like, probably not. But then there was a comment on my Instagram and someone said, does anyone know where Tristen gets his rings? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I was like, okay, whatever. Like I'll sell them once and then make some money and then like keep going. And my mindset was like kind of how people will get rid of old clothes on Instagram, like sell them on Depop or Poshmark or anything. They just, sell it and then get back to their normal job. And I said I was launching. I definitely think Instagram stories are one of the most powerful tools on Instagram because you can get people to follow a whole journey and watch and read way more than you can in a post. So I would kind of like really try to make my stories like meaningful and let people in on like the process of everything. And so I said I was going to launch. I remember it was December 3rd of 2017. And I was like, I have no clue how this is going to go. I didn't even know what I was doing. I went to lunch with Kenzie and Colby, my friends who do e-commerce. And they're like, here's how you run a site. You can use our shipping labels. We have old envelopes. Like it didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be good enough for it to work.
Yeah.
And that night, I said I was launching at 6 o'clock rolls around. I'm like still trying to upload products because I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't even posted on Instagram that they're live. And all of a sudden orders just like start shooting in. Like, you have a new order, you have a new order, you have a new order. And I was like, what is happening? Like, this is mind blowing. And I think the first night I sold like 120 something rings.
Wow.
But to me, that was like insanity. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to retire. I mean, not really, but I was like stoked.
Yeah.
So then it was kind of just like, okay, like, well, if it sold out, I'll do it again next week and then next week. And then kind of like.
And were you making all these rings at that point?
Yeah, by hand. And it was like, literally my hands were like blistered and bleeding, but it was like, I don't know. I was just trying to figure it out as I was going. So that was kind of like to the initial launch of it.
And was it just one style you were doing at that point? Like one specific? What was it?
No, so it was like I had gone and collected a bunch of spoons and
so walk me through the product. Walk me through a spoon ring and what that is. Like you mentioned that you had seen one or something, but walk me through the actual product, what it is, how it's made.
It's obviously utensils, spoons and forks that I collect. It used to be on my world travels, but that kind of shut down and I had to pivot. But just from different places, I'll find silverware and then upload pictures of that to my site. And then a customer will go on and order like a certain style and they'll choose their size, like a 7 or a 12 or whatever. I'll then take that spoon and make it into that size for them, cut it, grind it, bend it, and then package it and ship it.
So you're still doing all that?
No.
Okay. So I was going to say, dude, that's 3 years. Your hands must be haggard at this point. If you've been doing
it definitely was not like a scalable model at all. It was exciting. And it was like what I knew, but I was just like this, I can't, if I want to grow this how I want to grow this, I can't keep doing this. So then I started like looking into China and manufacturing my own designs. And like after about 2 years, that kind of started, but it's definitely a big learning curve.
Yeah. So now you've got your designs that are popular and you're manufacturing those and selling them straight through the website. So, okay. So one of the huge problems for any entrepreneurs, especially, young entrepreneurs, especially e-commerce entrepreneurs that are trying to start an online business. One of the big things when I have people pitch me stuff or when I talk to brands or when I was working with students is the big question, and the word you always hear is scalable. Is it scalable? How are you going to scale that? Right. And you've probably heard that 1,000 times if you're, as you've been building this, and you already mentioned it. But so often I've seen this literally dozens of times where because it's not quote unquote scalable, the entrepreneur gives up because they're like, well, freak, I guess I can't keep making these by hand. And I have no idea how I would get to that next level. Like it's just, and I don't have the capital. I don't have the money to go and buy a big shipment. Cause in order to buy from China, you have to usually, buy in bulk or whatever. Walk me through. So you had this passion, you had this desire, this thing that turned into people are interested in this. Okay. Now I'm selling rings and now I'm selling out of rings. What was the process of realizing I need help to scale this business and then getting the help to scale the business and where you are now?
Yeah. So it definitely played to my advantage that I was naive and didn't know what I was doing and
Usually
didn't really
does
have
early on
expectations. Yeah. My mindset when I started was not, I'm going to build a massive brand. It was just, I'm going to sell these rings that I've been making to the people who have been asking for them, make some money, and then that's it. And so without that being in my mind, I wasn't psyching myself out because it was never like a problem that I even thought of.
Yeah.
But once I started seeing success with it and it kept going, my mind always went to like not only what's next, but also like, how can I keep this from dying? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of entrepreneurs deal with that, where you're, I don't want to say scared that it's going to die, but that's almost like how it feels. Like, I don't go to work 9 to 5 and I'm guaranteed a paycheck on Friday. Like, I have to make it happen or I get nothing. And so that's what definitely kept me like, okay, I got to figure this out. And it was like, at first, okay, I'm going to find spoons, a lot of them, so I can sell a style that people are liking, but it doesn't sell out after I sell 3 spoons. I can sell 100 spoons of that one style. And that like worked for a little bit. And then the bending was just taking too long. And like,
how many rings can you make out of one spoon?
1.
Oh, so you're just taking the end, like the top part that looks cool.
So if I found like a really cool spoon and 50 people wanted it, I could only make 1 sale off of that.
What are you doing with the rest of the spoon? Like the remaining?
I've actually kept all of them since I started, because at first I was like, I don't know what, like, I think this is all I'm going to have. So I'll just keep these and maybe like hire an artist to do something with it or something. And then I just kept on keeping them. And now I just have literally tens of thousands
like
of them.
Gnarly bling chain.
Yeah, for real. No, I have like buckets, like you don't even understand.
That's crazy.
So after like the spoons, kind of like, I was like, okay, I don't want to keep bending forever. I want to like manufacture my own designs.
Yeah.
I started looking into China and like things with that. And I actually went to China with Colby, who does Thread Wallets, and kind of learned a bit about manufacturing and saw this way of scaling where I could still have my touch and my name and still design the rings, but I wouldn't have to sit there bending them all. And that was like, I don't know, the next step to scaling. And I also think it's interesting because I notice in a lot of young entrepreneurs, they don't take huge risks with money, at least from my experience. It's not like I need $200,000 to make this work. A lot of people I know, they started with $20 and they just like kept building and kept working. And I almost feel like that does play to your advantage too, because there's not as much of a risk, I guess.
No, I can see that. And Colby's the man. So you've got like an unbelievable mentor to be able to like ask questions when you're at launch and go to China with him and ask him, because he did all that.
Totally.
But he's also so down to help. Like when I was out there at BYU Hawaii teaching, we every semester
Did you teach Colby and Ken's?
No, I was at school with them. I graduated with Kenzie.
Cool.
So we had classes together and stuff all through. We both graduated with the same degree.
Gotcha.
Not the exact same, a little bit different, but pretty much the same. I was out there as a teacher a couple years later. I went back and every semester we do business plan competitions, and I invited him and Kenzie to come out. So they came out, and of all of the judges that we had, judges, quote unquote, mentors, whatever, that came out and helped, he was, well, both of them, but Colby especially was like the most stoked to help the young entrepreneurs. Like he was staying late. Like, here's my number. Here's my email. Let me know if you need an internship, if you need, like, he was so giving and just so awesome. It was the best.
No, I definitely think it's so important to have people like that in your life. I remember I saw a quote that said, never take advice from someone who isn't where you want to be. And so that's when I'm like, okay, who's where I want to be? And the first one was like Ken's and Kolb's, because they were doing what I was like, I want to be doing that in 5 years, and they're already there. So why not follow someone you're one step behind instead of 20? And then also my friends Trevor and Steph, who they also have like an online store, and I would just go to them and just like ask them questions and try to like absorb their energy. And that was something that I was like, it's doable. You don't need to like go to college and find this outdated information. Just ask someone who did it last month and they can help you.
Yeah, that's smart, dude. That mentorship is everything. Like when you have when you have that person that, like you said, has been there, done that, and you can go to them and get answers quick to problems that you're facing in that exact moment. So did you know them before? And then, or did you reach out to them through this?
I had met Kenzie because I posted for Thread Wallets once.
Okay.
And then I went to like an event that they were at, and she's like, "Oh, I actually emailed you." And I was like, "Oh, hi, like good to meet you." And then it just kind of like evolved from that.
Cool. They're the
but
best.
Definitely super grateful for the people who are willing to help. And I think the entrepreneurship community is very willing to help, which I love.
Yeah. Shout out to Thread Wallets. Go buy a Thread wallet. They're the best.
Yeah, for real. Buy 10.
So, okay. So the transition then, I'm going to ask you a question that is kind of like a big question. But I'm curious on it. I was just in Hawaii last week, and I was talking to some of the people out there that I know that I work with, Tanner and those guys. But it's interesting when your brand is Tristen Ikaika. Your website is tristenikaika.com. On the rings, as far as I can tell, I don't have one, but as far as I can tell, you got either your name or your initials on each one of the rings. So you are creating a brand that is you. Like the brand is Tristen Ikaika.
Yeah.
How do you, how is that, I don't know, like mentally, psychologically, like that, the weight of that from time to time, I'm guessing is like, well, geez Louise, like this, what happens without me? Like, how do I scale this past me? Do I always have to be like, how do you separate yourself and your Instagram following and, your other social media followings, your brand, and then like your personal identity and who you are without allowing that to get, I'm sure you're in the thick of this trying to figure this out, but without all of that getting messy?
No, yeah. It's definitely a lot of conversations I've had to have with myself because I am so tied to the brand. And at first, and I think it still does play to my advantage because I think people like to connect brands with the face, with the person who's working on it, at least in my case. But then at the end of the day, sometimes I'm like, what if the rings fail? Then do I fail? Because it's not like I own this brand and the brand failed. It's like I am the brand. So if people don't buy into the brand, what does that mean about me? The mindset I kind of have right now is like, you have to leave work at work and go home and be a person. And that's something that has helped me like, okay, I Ikaika rings all the time. I am Tristen Ikaika and I sell rings. And that is something that I do. It's not something that I am, even though I'm super passionate about it. So I don't know. I think just the mental conversations with yourself is what keeps you sane, but it definitely is something that I'm still trying to figure out. Like, how would I ever sell this business if I wanted to do that? Or I don't know, just like the different parts that come with that. Yeah.
I think the key there is that you are having those conversations with yourself, because a lot of people don't, right? And then from a mental health standpoint or from being too close to it all the time and not being able to separate it, that can be heavy.
Yeah. I think something else that's helped me is like, you're not your failures in the same way you are not your successes, and trying to separate yourself from the ego of either of those, I think is huge.
It is huge, man. And honestly, I think that a lot of times it's easy to say you're not your failures to make somebody feel better or to make yourself feel better. But it takes a lot of control and ability to put your ego at the door, or your ego behind in order to say, but I'm also not my failures either. Like a lot of people try this and try this and try this and do things that they're passionate about and do and never see any success at all. But that's it. It's not, because of them. There's a lot of other circumstantial things around success. Right. So I think that's huge and that's probably a really hard line to walk as you're building a brand that is your name, and as you're building, an influencer, or building an Instagram following or whatever, to be able to differentiate between you and the brand and your successes and failures. That's all, like I said, that's all. I bet that takes a lot of work to stay on top of.
Yeah. And it's somewhere like, I definitely don't think I'm there yet, but it's somewhere I want to be. And I try to see that and get there every day. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's a healthy way to approach it. What have you seen out there that has made you think that way? Like what has affected you or influenced you in a way to say, I really need to pay attention to like kind of the mental health side of all of this and the ability to, separate myself from the failures. I mean, is there any influences you have out there that have impacted you in a way that have helped you think that way and do your best to stay healthy about it?
I just think social media in general is such a toxic environment and can be for people who aren't consciously thinking about what they're getting into, especially the ones that their income is a direct correlation to the amount of likes they're getting. Yeah. And then when you start losing the likes and attention, you're like, this is my whole life. What am I going to do? And I just noticed that. And I remember when I was starting my business, I thought, I don't want my income to be directly tied to that. And instead of focusing on getting more followers, I'm going to focus on being a better entrepreneur, like doing a killer campaign, coming up with a killer product, a killer packaging, like working on those things that I can control versus the following side that I can't control. And I think that's almost another mental shift happened. And then another one was I listened to a podcast about the guy who created Victoria's Secret. Mm-hmm. And do you know that story?
Yeah, I know part of it. I know who is it that I'm thinking of that was wasn't it the guy that Epstein was working for?
I don't know, to be honest.
Do you know the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing? Like that?
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? No, okay.
I do. I don't know how Victoria's Secret's tied into it though.
I think the guy that started Victoria's Secret, or at least the guy that owned it, was his money was all managed by Epstein. He was like, anyways, so total side note. But anyways, I don't know the story of.
Wait, that's funny. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, the guy who came up with the idea for Victoria's Secret sold it. And then the guy who bought the idea, it took off. And the guy who came up with the idea jumped off a bridge and killed himself.
Oh, geez, Louise. Okay, so it's not him. It's probably the guy that bought it from that guy then. That was
probably
involved with Epstein, yeah.
But it's just, you see these people who like have everything and then they lose everything and think they're nothing.
Yeah.
And I definitely think it would be hard. I can't say today, if you took everything away from me, I'd be the same person that I am. But it's definitely something that I would like to do because I don't want to be someone who loses everything and just mentally loses it.
Yeah. It's like figuring out your self-worth aside from.
Yeah. Which is hard.
It's tough.
Especially when you want to be driven about it and passionate and find success in it, but understand that that's not your identity.
And when it is so like numbers driven, right? Like there's no way to avoid the fact that you're looking at like traffic and you are looking at likes and you are looking at follows and you're looking at sales numbers and you're looking at how big was the day before Christmas and when you're the one doing all of that, it would be easy to say, to find the negativity in that and dwell on it and have it affect you negatively.
For me, once all my needs are met financially, it almost just becomes a game of like, what can I get the high score to be? Not necessarily like more money. It's like, I just want to give my baby like the most success I can. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a game, not necessarily like I'm not super emotional about it.
One of the podcast episodes, the guy we interviewed is named Jason Earl. You should go back and listen to it. I think there's probably some good stuff in there. But he's the one that runs or was running. I'm not sure if he currently is, but was running that entrepreneurship center at BYU Hawaii. But cool. Super successful entrepreneur, has made tons of money starting businesses and selling them and all this stuff. And one of the things he said that impacted me, and I talked to my wife about it after, which relates to what you're saying, is that him and his wife, in an effort to not get caught up in the numbers and the greed and the potential greed of wealth, all of those things. Like him and his wife said, if we ever hit this mark, then we're good. And at that point, we're going to continue to be ambitious and stuff, but we're going to change our focus from like building businesses and just acquiring as much stuff and whatever that we can to look outward and to help inspire and help support and help build up others, So it was crazy because in like his early 40s is when he sold his business and made a ton of money. And it's like, well, now what do I do? And so that's when he went from being like this really successful engineer and businessman that sold his company to then going and just volunteering as a teacher at BYU Idaho. Like, I'll just help the entrepreneurs there. Let's do it. And then obviously he's turned that into its own thing and he's been successful elsewhere as well along the way. But I always thought that was like so inspiring to say, once I get to this point, then then I hit my goal. And I actually just talked to another guy, this guy, Will Reynolds, who is the man. He's like the thought leader and influencer guy, or not influencer, but he runs an SEO agency called Seer Interactive, and they're huge. They're big name in the digital marketing world. He said the same thing. I interviewed him last week, now that I think about it, or a couple weeks ago. And he said his motivating factors and his drive was so much deeper than just the business or just the revenue, that he just set a goal for himself. It says, as soon as I can pay my house off, like it's completely paid off and I don't have a mortgage payment every month, that's when I know that I really hit it. And then from there, I can just like keep cruising and keep being fulfilled by the passion for the work, and not necessarily just be being, chasing down every single dollar and being so, maybe scarcity mentality that way.
And I think that mindset is exhausting for anyone.
Yep. And it's not, you can't keep it up, right? Eventually it's going to.
Yeah, totally. And I see people in my life, I mean, not that I'm close to, but I see certain people who are very driven by the money, and they just want more money, more money, more money. And I just think, when is enough? When are you going to take it and be like, okay, I'm good? Like, I don't know with that mindset that you ever get there.
Well, it's figuring out what outside of the success fulfills you and putting time and attention on that, right? So Will Reynolds, when I interviewed him, he was talking about his family, his kids, his community, helping like the homeless population in Philadelphia where he lives. Like those are things that are near and dear to his heart, and things that he really supports. And so he doesn't put all of his, and those that we see that are super successful don't put all of their meaning and self-worth in this one thing, right? Because that one thing can be fleeting. Yeah. And finding stuff outside of that can be a game changer when you need it most. Do you know who Tony Hsieh is?
Yeah, I do. He just passed away.
Yeah. So he's a good example. He's somebody we talked about, like the man, right? Like I've heard him speak, I've read his book, and I can't remember, Delivering Happiness. He started Zappos and like changed the game for customer service, like in e-commerce. Like it's an amazing book. And unfortunately, like he was just trying to find meaning, like after selling his company for hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever. And he was just loaded, but he was seeking out meaning in all these places that became dangerous and surrounding himself with people that thought the same way. And the next thing you know, he ends up, trying to find meaning in like being in a little, shack created like with fire, trying to make it hot enough to like take him to some weird place while he was on a certain drug. And it's like, that's the end of it. It's crazy. Like that's obviously the extreme version, but
no, for sure. It's wild to think about.
What would you tell an entrepreneur? This is a real cliche question, but I'm curious if you were, because I know you were at one point on your website, I was looking at the questions and stuff on there. You have an FAQ section, which was cool and helpful, but you had said like at one point you wanted to go to Stanford and you were like all in on, potentially getting this education stuff. And then you realized one day, like, I'm going to pursue, like you said earlier, I'm going to use my time to pursue these goals that I have that might go against the grain a little bit, but that are my true passions and my true, kind of driving forces for me. That's obviously, depending on the person, that could be seen as a dangerous route to take. What type of advice would you give, if there was like a 17-year-old listening to this right now that has this desire to, build a business or be an entrepreneur, or start an e-commerce company, or become an influencer, whatever it might be? What advice would you give yourself at that age to kind of help weather, what you've been going through the last couple of years as you built it?
I think this is another answer that's almost a little cliche, but it's just start. Like, go for it. Make a list of what you want to do and then break that down into every tiny detail and take that first step of, even if it's Googling how to sell something online, like just start and go, because you'll run into dead ends and you'll go back and you'll figure it out. But if you don't start that momentum, you won't get there. I think people need to get more comfortable with the idea of failure than the idea of regret, because so many people don't do it because they're afraid of like, oh, it probably won't work. And that's just like, I don't want to do that. But what if you look back and say, oh, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago? To me, just going for it and it not working fast is way better than having to live with that regret.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's like, and it's the need to start knowing that you're going to hit bumps in the road. Yeah. Right. Like the successful entrepreneurs you hear about or about, or the ones you see around you, are the ones that are are starting something or willing to take the first step or two when somebody else might be intimidated and just say, no, somebody else is doing it better. You're a great example. How many ring companies are there? Like, you're not just competing with like
bajillion,
small business, bajillion ring companies, but you're also dealing with like huge ring companies that have been around for hundreds of years that create jewelry. Like it's like, and to be able to take a step and just be audacious, like I said earlier, and just be like, well, I might be able to figure this out. I might be able to find a little spot in this. I mean, how do you approach that when it's, cause I mean, I know a couple people that I know personally that have ring companies. How do you approach that? Like that competitive industry, when you're getting,
that's actually something I didn't think about for a long time, was like market share and competitors and stuff, because I felt so connected with my customers that I didn't necessarily feel like they were people looking for rings and they were going to buy one elsewhere. They were people who bought into my story and thought it was cool and they wanted a piece of it. So I think finding something that you're passionate about is where you can find loyal customers, because they also share that passion for whatever you're doing, or that passion for passion. It doesn't have to, I think every upbringing of every company is different, but if you can find a loyal customer base who you feel connected with, you can go really far with that. And that's the cool thing about business, is anyone can start competing with the biggest businessmen in the world.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy to think, one of the things I used to tell my students was, even if you just went back in time, like 15 years, you've been able to accomplish thus far. It was possible, but the means to get there would have been so much crazier. Like, for you to say like, hey, look at this cool idea I have for this ring, and then be able to get 20,000 people to see that would have been so brutal and so expensive. And like, just not, and now it's like you said, you built a following of people that like there was this like, this audience that was interested in you, this community was built. And then one post that takes you, 10 minutes to put together or whatever, and you push it out there and thousands of people can see it. It's a game changer.
Totally. The resources we have at our fingertips today, literally at our fingertips, is something that people even 20 years ago would die to have. So why would you take all those tools and resources for granted? Like, you can literally Google anything and figure out how to do it. Like me getting packaging from China, the fact that I could figure that out at 19 years old is actually crazy if you would have told me that 10 years ago.
It really is. What's crazy is that when I got MW, I started building the business. I had Google open at all times, so that when somebody asked me a question on a phone call about their website or something I didn't know, I would just Google it and be like, oh yeah. So, the CMS you're using is, but I didn't even know what that stood for. So I'd buy a little bit of time and answer the question as I saw the answer come up on Google. The crazy thing is though, is I don't know you all that well yet, but just knowing what I've heard so far, if you were an entrepreneur selling rings in 1920, you would have figured it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you would have said, okay, I'm going to go door to door. Like I'm going to make 20 rings and I'm going to go door to door until I sell every single one of them and go make 40 rings. And then I'm going to make 40 rings, right? Like the people that are going to do it and take those steps in the right direction to kind of push the needle a little bit they're going to figure it out. Yeah.
And I think knowing that, they always say like, oh, you can break the rules. And I'm like, no, you can create the rules. The way e-commerce is moving, nothing is like off limits. You can try anything and it might work really well. And the big guys will start copying you, because I just think that's how fast things are moving.
It is. It totally is, man. I guarantee you've had big brands, big names check out your stuff and see you on Instagram and said, oh, we got to try to mimic what this kid's doing. No question about it.
That's crazy to think about, but yeah, that would be wild.
Yeah, I guarantee it. It's just, I know, because they're doing market research. They're trying to figure out what the trends are there. And the best person to figure out what the trends are right now is you. Like, let's look at the comments that this guy's getting, the product that he's creating. So how do you go from that? So the mentality with building that audience that was small, that you could listen to your audience directly and build a product that you knew they would love. And then you said that you hadn't even thought about market share. You hadn't even thought, but now obviously just by saying that, it means that you have thought about that, right?
Yeah.
So how do you come up on that and say, oh, geez, I guess if I want again, we're using the word scale, right? But if I want to scale
Yeah.
up that next level, that next tier, I guess I do have to start considering what some of these bigger players with bigger money and bigger, names are doing, but I still need to stay authentic and true to roots. How have you weathered that so far? How have you approached that?
The wave I'm kind of on right now is looking at the customers and being like, okay, what do my people like the most, and what can I provide them with that they would like, not only like even more, but that more people would also like, while fitting in the means of what the brand is. And I do think like doing your research is not a bad thing. Looking at other companies like, oh, how did these do theirs, and how did this company does their stuff, but not copying it, but just taking notes, almost like taking a page from their book here and a page from their book here and implementing that into yours. Like right now, I want to do more gold designs because I've seen a lot of like gold jewelry that girls are wearing that I think is amazing, but I don't see it being done in the way that I want it to be done. So that's why my brand is going to go do it the way I want it to be done. And I'm going to hope that it resonates with the customers out there. I think you either evolve or repeat. Yeah.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. You, and again, I think your approach is so healthy. The way you're approaching this is awesome, dude. One of the things that I, if people have listened to the podcast, they've heard, and you probably heard it on when I talked to Tanner and Lo or the Bowers, but I always talk about getting entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, people that are trying to figure it out, learning to get in over their head and love it. Like loving that process of being in too deep, because in order to learn to swim, you've got to jump into the deep end, right? Like that it's sink or swim a lot of times. So can you think of a time thus far in building the brand that you walked into a room, or you got on a call, or you had a conversation with somebody where you were most definitely in over your head and you loved it?
Yeah, the moment that comes to mind, there's two. One is trying to go to China with Colby because I'm stupid and didn't know you needed a visa to get into China, and didn't really
a very
think of
specific
that.
Chinese visa. Yeah.
Yeah, until like a week before, and they're actually really hard to get.
Yep.
So I ended up getting like stuck in Hong Kong for 3 days and like trying to get there. But I remember when I was stuck in Hong Kong by myself trying to find a visa, I just thought if you would have told Tristen this 5 years ago that he would be in Hong Kong by himself trying to get a visa so he could meet with manufacturers for his business, he would have freaked out.
Yeah, totally.
And I think you also have to understand that you're never going to get to a point in life where you have no problems. A lot of people will dream up this perfect life and they live in this perfect house with their perfect family, but they forget that you're still going to have to go to the grocery store and get eggs. Like your dream life has to be this day-to-day life. And it doesn't have to be in 10 years or in when you're 50. Like it's always going to be in 10 years if that's your mindset. So think of your life now, like your day-to-day life. What would your dream life be for yourself at that age? And fall in love with that. Another moment that came to my mind when you said that was these press boxes I did that had dry ice in them. And those were the first press box I ever did. And they were almost impossible to figure out, like getting styrofoam boxes and getting custom boxes that fit in those boxes and getting dry ice and shipping dry ice and making sure it lasts overnight. But I didn't know you needed permits to ship dry ice. That was something that I never thought it would get done because I was running into so many problems. But I fell in love with the journey of figuring it out. And that's why I was able to figure it out, because I didn't like, oh, this is defeating. I just tell myself I'm on the amazing race and I'm trying to figure it out. And that's kind of the mindset that like keeps me going.
Dude, I want to hear your internal conversations you have with yourself. I love how you keep bringing that up. I'm on the amazing race right now. I gotta figure.
No, literally like, well, so the night that I went to ship everything, this was the craziest night of my freaking life. It took me 1.5 years to get these boxes, all the different parts to them. We buy probably 500 pounds of dry ice, and we're driving around the day of asking people if we can ship them. FedEx says we can. So we drive to FedEx probably 20 minutes before they close, because I want the dry ice to like stay cold as long as it can. So I didn't want to ship it in the morning because I lose 12 hours that way. Like I want it right before it gets picked up. And we're in there. My friends are in the parking lot putting dry ice in the boxes and taping them up. And it's freezing outside, keep in mind. We're like hauling boxes in and out of the parking lot. we're inside and typing all these addresses in, and this lady from the back walks up and she's like, "Oh, you can't ship these." I was like, no. Like, we were here like an hour ago and you said we could. So whatever. She's like, "Oh no, you need a permit." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this dry ice is going to go to waste." So I remember just looking at everyone and I'm like, put in the car and drive to UPS. They closed in, I think, 5 minutes. And my mindset was like, we have nothing to lose. Like, either I can't ship these here and I give up, or I can't ship these here and I drive to UPS and I can't ship them. So like, let's at least give it a chance. And we got there, and by some miracle, the ladies working there let us ship them, and it got there, and it was like this big moment of it all coming together when I didn't think it would at the last second. And that to me was an adrenaline rush, and that was fun. It was stressful, but it was fun.
Now I'll tell you the other side of the story is I've seen the video. I saw Lauren Low Beeston open, she did like the unboxing.
Yeah.
You shipped her, and I'm sure this wasn't I don't know if that was the first round you did this or not, but I saw that and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, that's insane. The thought that went into that and the creativity and just knowing that. So for anybody listening that doesn't know, and maybe you can explain it better, but from what I gathered, I'll tell you the user experience I had seeing this was somebody had enough foresight to know that unboxings are cool, but I want my unboxings to be over the top cool. And so I'm going to put dry ice in the box so that when somebody opens it, Tristen Ikaika is rising from the smoke, basically, as the smoke clears, and then your name and brand is right there with the rings. Like, I saw that on the other end, and I don't think even for a second, none of your customers are thinking this. Like, they're just like, man, this guy's so cool. They didn't see the mad dash to to the post office to get the scent where you got, the door shut in your face, and then you had to bolt to the other place to do it. Like, you don't see all of the behind the scenes. All you see is this amazing presentation of this product, and you just think like, oh, this guy's got it figured out, right? But it's like, no, that took a ton of thought, foresight, research, whatever. That's awesome. And the crazy thing too is I have an office in Hong Kong. So our agency, I have an office in Hong Kong. We got a full team out there. And I before this year went out there all the time. And I've had, dude, I can share that. I can share the Hong Kong experience where I've said that so many times as in 2015 and 16, I was building our team out there and getting the business off the ground. So many times in Hong Kong. I love Hong Kong. And so many times I thought, dude, what would younger Corey say if he could look at himself right now and see myself in this meeting surrounded by a bunch of, Hong Kongers or Chinese people, whatever, and like doing this deal or closing this deal or whatever. Like, I had so many of those moments, and I love that that's one of my goals, is to always have that presence of mind, is to say like, what would I say if I could look at myself, 10 years ago, how stoked would I be? And if I'm not, then it's like, well, figure it out. Cause you want to be the person today that would have been stoked to see you, in the past or whatever. And I try to have that. I remember, so one of my partners at MWI, Curtis, he and I went out there a lot early on. And I remember having those moments because I've known him since 7th grade. And I've said that so many times as we built a business together, like, dude, if we could have seen ourselves now, we would have, like, our minds were blown,
Totally. It's funny. People always interview celebrities and be like, what was it like to perform at the Super Bowl? And they're kind of like, oh, it was cool. But it's also like, you have to understand what it took for that person to get there.
Yeah.
It was years of hard work. So when they're asked to perform at the Super Bowl, it's not a big shock.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to look back and be like, oh yeah, my day-to-day life to get here has actually been crazy. And the fact that I got here is crazy.
Yep. Yeah. And
because day-to-day, you don't feel that different. Like, I mean, there's probably a lot of logistical things that went into you getting that office. So when you got it, it wasn't like, congrats, you have this office. You're like, I know, I've been trying to do this for months.
Yeah. Years. Yeah. And then people look, and then it's interesting when you get, because you get jaded a little bit, right? Like, you get in the thick of it. And then all of a sudden somebody's like, wow, you did it. And you're like, oh yeah, I guess that was a lot of work. I was just grinding away. I wasn't really thinking about it.
Yeah. It was like all you knew.
And Hong Kong is sick. Like, I heard you say that right when it came back, but like, especially, and it's been a bummer, man. 2020 was brutal because it was the first year I haven't been there at all in like 4 years. But yeah, just from like the pace that things go in Hong Kong is so great. Like, and the people are awesome and stuff, but like doing business there it's something I'll always love. It's the best.
Wow. And it's beautiful. Like
Yeah.
that city right on the ocean, right in the mountains. I have never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Did you go up to like, is it Victoria's Peak or whatever, where you go up and you ride the tram all the way up and you have the full view of the city?
I didn't do that, but I did go on a hike up at night
Yeah.
where you could like look down at all the skyscrapers, and it was the coolest hike I've ever been on.
Probably the same.
Yeah.
Insane hikes there. Or my managing partner out there is like a big trail runner, and he's always posting amazing pics. I'm like, dang.
Oh, that's so cool.
What are the plans for the future right now with the brand? So you've got obviously a lot of really cool stuff going on. You're sold out of all your products right now. You've got, I mean, I know COVID has probably thrown the travel side of things for an absolute loop, as it has for so many people. But what are the big goals and the big ambitions and what you're working on in 2021?
Right now I'm still working on original designs to kind of plan out each drop way out. I'm used to doing things last minute, and I'm trying to change that right now. I have a couple other fun products that I think align with the brand very well, but aren't rings in the works that I'm super stoked to launch. And I also want to get into like collaborating with other brands that I feel fit well. I think that could be also a fun, almost like passion project. And that's kind of like, as far as 2021, that's what's on my agenda, I would say.
Do you have a process for setting goals? Like, are you a big goal keeper?
Yeah, my whiteboard is my life. Goalkeeper. Yeah, that's me. No, yeah, I'm huge into lists, huge into goals, huge into like writing them where you can see them and all that.
So just right before you this morning, I did an interview with Jason Bagley, who, you know, the Old Spice commercial that's like, ladies, look at your man.
Yeah.
So he was the what was his title? I think he was creative director at Wyden Kennedy, the agency that did all those. But he eventually was like the chief creative officer, or whatever. So that wasn't what the title was. I can't remember what his title was there, but the top dog on all things creative for Nike and KFC and I mean basically every big brand you can think of. And it was interesting. So as I was interviewing him, we're talking and he's telling me like he knew what Wyden and Kennedy was, which is like a huge digital agency, or sorry, not digital, a huge ad agency. And when he was in school, like, 20, 25 years ago, he knew who they were. And for him, like he was going to BYU and he's like, there's no way I'll ever be able to get that job. It just seemed so like not possible.
Unattainable.
It was like, I don't know anybody that works there. I've never been to Portland. I don't know anything about that. And so he was telling me this, and I told him, I was like, you didn't know anybody, you didn't know anything. Like, it's crazy that you were able to do that. But then he kind of paused and he's like, actually, let me see if I can find something. He reaches under his desk and he pulls out this thing and he's like, actually, this is, I say that I didn't think it was possible, but he's like, this was years before I got my job at Wyden Kennedy, and he still has this thing. It was just a little like,
no way,
or piece of paper like that he kept with him at all times. And it had like all of his personal goals and objectives on. And he read it to me. What it said on it was like, I will work in a 100 square foot office at Wyden Kennedy.
Wow.
And he had written that years before just because he had kind of that approach to, people call that a lot of different things, right? Like vision boarding, whatever, goal setting. But everybody has one of the common threads I'm seeing as I'm talking to like, whether it's insanely successful entrepreneurs or young hustling up and coming entrepreneurs like yourself, or religious leaders or academics with PhDs in mental health, like all these people that we're interviewing, like the common thread as I'm talking to people and where they're able to build success. I'm not going to say like even wealth or anything, because that's not what it is. It's like just building success and fulfillment in life is the ability to, it's set goals, but like real goals, and like be write them down and put them up on a whiteboard, like you said, right? And like constantly be updating those. And when I'm my best self, it's when I have a notepad next to my desk and I'm constantly taking notes and like writing things down and writing things that I want to shoot. And it seems like that's just a common thread that people continue to talk about, is planning way ahead of what they're going to see, 10 years later and then seeing it happen.
I think when you write down your goals, you start to actually take the steps it's going to take to get there. But if you just think of it and never write that down, all it ever is a thought that just comes and goes.
Yeah. And it's almost like how much of that is conscious and how much of it is subconscious.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's something to be said for like writing it down and thinking about it a lot. One thing I've said is when I was building our agency, I made my password for everything. I'm not going to say what it was. It's not the same anymore. All you hackers out there. But I made my password for everything a very specific goal that I wanted to hit, so that every time I had to enter my password anywhere, I thought about it, which was like 50 times a day. And it just made me think about it constantly.
I love that.
I was constantly like re-saying it in my head. And it just, and again, I'm not like some mystical, like, whatever, the universe just put it in my lap. It takes tons of work and stuff, but it does give you the focus and the intent behind the work that you do that tends to lead, to the accomplishment of those goals.
It's funny. I have a picture of my mirror in my bedroom. And it said marathon with like a little empty box next to it, and spoon rings, and there was one other. I'd have to go back and look, but I remember those were like 3 big goals I had for a long time. And I started selling the spoon rings, and then I remember looking at my mirror being like, oh yeah, I almost like forgot that I wrote that. But it's definitely like put it in my head and told me to like, you want to check this box off, so start taking the action to do that.
Yeah, I'm telling you that. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. And I've seen it over and over again as I've continued to talk to people. You've got a really cool story. I'm excited to see. I hope we stay connected, and I'd love to
for sure
work together on anything, or just keep me posted, man. Let's stay in touch. I think you got a cool thing going, and we know a lot of the same people, and I know a lot of people that respect you. I'm excited to see the continued rise of Tristen Ikaika and all that you're doing. So tell what is the best place for people to find you, to get engaged, to become a part of the community, to see product, whatever it might be, if they're looking to, get involved with what you're working on?
Yeah. So my Instagram is just Tristen Ikaika, Tristen, and then Ikaika spelled Ika. And then my website is tristenikaika.com. And those are mostly the 2 places, but thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. There's a couple more questions that I was told by my assistant to ask you.
Yeah.
Are you single and ready to mingle?
I would say yes. For a long time, my mindset was like, oh, it's okay that I'm not dating. I'm just like career driven. Like it'll happen when it happens. And now I'm kind of like, okay, so like, when's it going to happen?
And then the next question she wrote a bunch of like questions she wanted to ask and stuff when we were like prepping for this. And the question right below that is, how the heck are you single?
I don't know.
She may or may not have said heck.
That's funny.
That's funny, man. Well, dude, seriously, pleasure to meet you. Let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help out. If you ever have any questions or anything, whatever. I don't know what that looks like, but I'll do the same.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, likewise. Back at you.
Awesome, dude. Thanks for being on the show.
Dude, thank you. I appreciate that. And I look forward to keeping in touch and just the future.
Okay, cool. I'll let you know when this is all live. Thanks so much for doing it. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you, dude.
Hello, it's Corey here, and I just want to thank you so much for listening into the Hope Strategy podcast. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are enjoying having these amazing conversations with these incredible individuals talking about hope. We'd love it if you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and share it with anybody you feel that can benefit from these messages of hope. Thank you so much for listening to the Hope Strategy podcast.